Welcome everybody to the iGEN podcast, the social platform for understanding global cultures and self-development. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn and understand yourself and others with many interesting topics leading to the part of world peace. Be a peace ambassador, be with us, be iGEN.Because we aim to promote world peace through sustainable self-actualization. What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of iGEN podcast. I'm Pet. You're back with me. It's been a long day without you, my friends.I'm really sorry. It took me too long to get back from episode 1. But anyway, we're back. I know that because of the COVID-19 outbreak, this is a difficult time for all people around the world. We really understand what each of us is facing right now, but we will get through this tragedy together. Just so you know that we're with you always and at all times, man. For today,I would like to rest with you a subject that could probably take away some of your boredom during a quarantine. We do not know how long it will last. It could be a few months. Who knows? Until then, make sure you have everything you need to survive the situation. Take good care of yourself. But right now, let's do something interesting.So, the topic for today's podcast is learning language is a good catalyst. Yes, it sounds like a normal topic, but surely there is something deep inside. Does anybody here like to learn a language? For me, I really love that. I think because I did it quite well in the class since I was young, and during my childhood,There was one of the biggest movie series in the world, Harry Potter. I know you knew it. It really inspired me a lot. I swore to myself that one day I would speak English like a native speaker. And after all this time, I had a chance to learn a bit of Korean, French, and German. Now I'm working on German seriously. Why should I point out that learning language is a good catalyst?We all know that a catalyst is like an accelerator for a chemical reaction. Metaphorically speaking, it is like a process of self-development. And I want to mention that everything that you do to improve your knowledge or your skills or whatever for the process of self-development is counted. But for this podcast, it is a fact that we are Thais who love to learn and speak English.We then focus on the process of learning language. So, how can it be a good catalyst? When you start to learn something new, you usually focus on it and put all your energy into it. From the very first moment of learning, you can tell for yourself that you feel really enthusiastic, that you are concentrating on what you are learning, and that you are really enjoying this atmosphere.In the thinking process, something gradually changes by a single small second. The vibration is brought back into vibration internally, which leads to hope and pride, the hope of being a master in what you are learning. You would visualize yourself with foresight, which could give you encouragement and self-motivation. So, what could happen next?You would allow yourself more time for learning and regular practice while you consider all things in your life to be almost the same. This could lead to a kind of self-discipline and also to time management. You see, something has changed better in some ways. Theoretically, it was said that if you continue or practice like this for 21 days, it will become your lifelong behavior. It's easy to say, right? But taking action is another matter. But still, it was a try, isn't it? And as I mentioned before, this process could be working with any activity or course that offers a self-development aspect. So what are the special features of learning language that make it different and distinctive? What do you think? From the language itself, I would define it as a complex learning because the component of language learning consists of 4 types, namely vocabulary, grammar, syntax, and pragmatics. And you know that it is inevitable to master only 1 or 2 if you want to be fluent in that language. Accordingly, this complex process would give you the ability to think systematically. If you practice it, you would understand that in order to deliver speech, you need to think about vocabulary and grammar at the same time. And syntax would help you build a sense of communication. For pragmatics, this would help you become more demanding. So this is how it works. In addition to the ability to think, you would also have the chance to develop social skills. I think that's really obvious. We learn a language to communicate with people or maybe friends who speak that language, right? Or someone could say that I learn it just to follow my idol or anything. But let's say that you won't learn it just for the sake of the idol. After all, you would be trying to find an opportunity to practice your skills, wouldn't you? In that respect, it's a way to develop inner confidence. Learning a language is a long process. We learn it through different platforms like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. The more you learn and practice, the more self-confidence you gain, and you would gain more self-confidence in using the language in communication with others. I don't think I need to go into detail about how social competence develops during these processes. You will understand them individually. Well, there is a big aspect that also concerns about the perspective of morality. Wow, you might think that this has really gone that far. Well, I think this one is really deep inside your head. In the long process of learning languages, we get not only the language, but also the culture. Yes. During the process of language learning, you would also learn about the culture and some stories through words or characters. For example, about the formation of Chinese characters. If we learn in detail, you would better understand and appreciate the stories of the culture which were taught, or from which most European languages today come from Latin, as well as some cultures. This would make us more comprehensive in some sensitive details and lead to an understanding of differences. Correct. This is the key. You learn a language, you learn to know how to communicate with that language. You get to know a culture, you learn how to communicate in a proper context that needs to understand some sensitive points. In a long-term process, in the way you gradually learn a language and understand another culture over a longer period of time, you become aware of the differences between people, which also makes you more open and empathetic from a moral point of view. All right, we really have come so far from the top. From the topic, I mentioned that learning language is a good catalyst. That's because it takes us through a large amount of time in various aspects, including behavior, skills, and perception. It can broaden our perspective and enlighten us about humanity. Well, peace is not so far away, is it? Anyway, actually, it's not just me today. Yeah, I have a special guest from Germany. It is my friend named Andreas Kenbach. or Andy, he can speak 3 languages, namely German, English, and Russian. Wow! How could he do that? And what he got by learning and speaking 3 languages? Let's have a look at this.
So first of all, thank you for having me here. I mean, the coronavirus is giving everybody trouble right now, but you guys are doing a great podcast here. It's cool that you've set up this program. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Andreas, but you can call me Andy. I'm right now 22 years old and I study engineering at the University of Stuttgart in Germany. I speak right now 3 languages fluently, among those is German, because that's obviously my national language. Another language I speak is Russian, because my parents are from Russia, and I learned German and Russian when I was a child, because I grew up bilingual. Until today, I use both languages in my daily life, with friends, acquaintances, colleagues, and of course my family. And the last language I speak is English. First of all, English is the world language. In many countries around the world, foreigners can only get ahead with English. It makes traveling just easier. In addition, being proficient in a language helps you in your working environment. English is as well the language of media, such as music or movies. Furthermore, with English, you can study anywhere in the world. Because English is spoken in so many different countries, there are thousands of schools and universities around the world offering English language programs. Especially for young people, this is very interesting and attractive. So these were many reasons why I decided back then to learn English. Now the question, how did I learn English? It is very important to mention that I already had basic English skills because in Germany they teach kids English in school. But I just had the basics of middle school level though. For me personally, I didn't feel like learning English through books or anything else. It was just too boring. Apps unfortunately did not exist back then. So my approach was to combine learning English with fun. I started, for example, playing computer games that I've already played in English, or I just switched them to English. One of those examples was Age of Empires, and that worked out just very good for me because I already knew how the game worked, and so to transfer it in English was not that difficult. Another approach was to watch already seen movies in English with German subtitles. And the German subtitles just make it easier to get started. Then I watched new movies with German subtitles, and at some point I just switched to English movies with English subtitles. Subtitles are very helpful and should not be underestimated. And then at some point I just left out the subtitles. I still remember watching Dragon Ball Z completely in English. And then at some point I just watched English YouTube videos, and I read as well a lot in English. And through this part of my exercise, I learned with fun, the passive part of a language, the understanding part. And the active part, that's like speaking, and you just have to learn it practically. I've first tried to just think in English, that's like talking to yourself. And then I started speaking English with as many people I could find. And after years of training, I just was able to speak English sufficiently well at some point. And I have to be honest with you, it were really years. If you want to learn a language well, you should allow time for that. All in all, now I'm very thankful that I can speak English well enough. I had so many situations in which I would have not made any progress at all without this knowledge. I have met so many people with whom I can only speak in English. I need English at college. I need English when I travel. It's unbelievable how important this tool is for me. And well, that was a rough overview of my way of learning English. If I had to give now some tips on how to learn English, I would start like this. First of all, the motivation must come from within. It should really be a strong desire to learn the language. Otherwise, you will only complain about the effort and then you just break off your attempts at some point. Then I would learn the basics with something like an app or a textbook. After I've learned the basics, I would watch many movies as described with subtitles. I would just use Netflix, YouTube, whatever. And first I would use my own native subtitles, then English subtitles, and then just no subtitles. As well, I would also start to read English books. When I'm ready for the next step, I would start thinking in English. And that's a tricky one because in the beginning, you are absolutely not used to this. Then I would look for a partner or something like that to speak English with. And that I would practice for around 1,000 hours over a couple of years to learn the language thoroughly. Practice makes perfect, man.
Thanks a lot, Andy. That's really inspiring. It's a good story and good suggestion. You can see how he motivated himself and implemented to become more proficient in English. But this is a second-handed knowledge. It means you need to take your own action and see how much is it work with you. People have different style, so what Andy has done probably might be work with some people and not for some. Therefore, go make your own first-handed knowledge. Another good technique from my experience, setting your time. Set a fixed time to learn regularly. For example, I set my time at 8 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. regularly, if I'm not really busy with something else. By this technique, this could help you making a focus and a progress on what you're learning. Your brain shall gradually recognize the step of learning, and it would develop decision-making and prioritizing behavior in the long run as well. Okay, to wrap up, there's a lot of benefit when you start to learn and develop yourself. For the aspect of learning language, it's not only the language that you get, but you also get to develop many soft skills and some essential behavior for your life. Furthermore, it is like broadening your world and your mind. That's another way to connect yourself to the world. So I hope the topic today would inspire you to do something during the quarantine. Go ahead and give it a try. You can do it. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get early notification for any new topic from us. Stay safe, stay blissful. With love from iGEN. Goodbye. สวัสดีครับ iGEN, the international generation. Grow with us, grow with iGEN.